All right, what's going on, everybody? Appreciate you guys hopping in to the YouTube live stream for the next hour or so. We're going to be going through all of your Q&A with waiver wires, trade advice, everything like that. Again, if you're new, make sure you're subscribed. That's the only way I'm going to be able to see your questions. But we got a couple questions in the queue right now, a couple players you want to talk about. And we will start with these two right here. Schlock asked, what do I do with Pittman and Rashad White? I think there's a different sense of panic on both of them. To me, Michael Pittman, you worry about him a little bit more. I'm worried about Michael Pittman. One, because I think Anthony Richardson is not, I'm not going to say not looking great. I think he's okay. But I think he's starting to look Alec Pierce's way more. I think the Colts are starting to lead into the run game. Anytime we talk about a panic meter with any of these players, understand it's only been 2 weeks. But I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, panic meter Pittman, probably like a 7 right now. I don't know what you can do with him other than try to sell him. I don't know. You're kind of selling low, though. So I would hold out hope for Pittman. Chances are he's your third-round pick. I wouldn't freak out and try to get him off your roster after 2 weeks. Rashad White, very similar thing. Like, Bucky Irving's efficient. I mean, the way the matchup looked for both of those guys walking into the game, and I talked about this a bunch, you couldn't expect a huge game on the ground from either of those guys against the Detroit defense. One, the Detroit rush defense is really good. Two, the Detroit pass defense is not very good. So that was always going to be the direction they went. They were always going to pass the ball. They were always going to try to basically work ways that the Lions defense couldn't stop. And it worked. They scored, 23 points, and they won the game. So it worked. The game plan worked. I'm not super worried about Rashad White. I am fascinated to see, really fascinated to see how Bucky Irving comes into play as they get better matchups, though, because I am a little bit worried about the volume distribution between those two. So for both of those guys, I would stay put. I'd be a little more worried about Michael Pittman, but for both of those guys, I would stay put. Now, I was offered a trade, Xander. I give Kyren and Tyreek for Marv and Brees. Kyren and Tyreek for Marv and Brees. Right now, I would rather have Kyren and Tyreek because I do think the volume for Marvin Harrison is not necessarily an issue, but I'm definitely more curious as to what that is going to look like because he had a crazy game this past week. First 2 catches were 2 touchdowns. That very much inflated. I wonder what it would have looked like if the game was closer. They passed the ball a little bit more. He played a little bit more in the second half, but I worry about the volume still. I mean, it's 2 games, 5 catches at the end of the day for Marvin Harrison, and you got to take that with a grain of salt. It still matters a lot. So I would, again, try to hold out a little bit for the Tyreek production. I understand, we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be like, but if there's anybody who's quarterback proof, especially in an offense that will get him the ball in the screen game a lot, it's Tyreek Hill. So I would rather have Kyren and Tyreek. I think Kyren and Brees, not interchangeable. I'd rather have Brees, but Braylon Allen looked really good. You don't know what the touches are going to look like in that world. I would rather have Kyren and Tyreek. Very minimal competition in those two offensive schemes, I guess. Braylon Allen or Corum for stash. This is a really tough one because I look at Blake Corum as the backup. I look at Blake Corum as a guy who can step in and get 20 carries a game. He did it in Michigan for 3 or 4 years. Braylon Allen looks really good. Braylon Allen looks really good, and both the starting running backs are injury-prone ahead of them. I would rather have the guy that I think has looked better, has produced more, and you're going to look at Blake Corum's stats from the past game and think, 30 rush yards on like 6 or 7 attempts. The vast majority of those, maybe all of them, but at least 5 or 6 of those carries came on the last drive of the game. They're literally running the clock out in that game, and that's when he got those touches. So the meaningful snaps are not necessarily there for Braylon Allen, but I am really fascinated to see, the meaningful snaps are not necessarily there for Blake Corum. They are there for Braylon Allen. Both of those guys are injury prone, so I do think you stash one of them. Absolutely. I would rather stash Braylon Allen. Do I panic on Tank Dell, and what could I get from him? Oh, this is a tough one. Again, if you guys are asking questions on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. That's the only way I'm going to be able to see him. Anybody on Instagram or TikTok right now, if you guys are asking questions, go to my profile, click the link in my bio, and join the YouTube and ask your questions there. Again, just make sure you're subscribed. Do I panic on Tank Dell, and what could I get for him? Panic meter probably at a 6 out of 10. I just didn't think he looked good this past Sunday night. Drop that honestly could have been a 60-yard touchdown, but that's the other side of the coin here. They're in such an explosive offense that 60-yard touchdown could happen like that. And if Nico Collins or Stephon Diggs goes down, God forbid, you are immediately getting a elite wide receiver. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I don't think you trade him, especially because his value is a little bit lower now. Especially, what do you have? 3 point something points. His value is so low. I don't think you're going to be able to get anything for those guys. And I think that's kind of the assumption I operate under with this stuff. If I have a player that is coming off of a bad game, the worst thing that can happen is I sell him, number one, for his lowest value, because chances are week 2, bad game, probably your lowest value. I don't know, 3 points especially. I sell him at his lowest value. And 2, he gets better after I sell him. That is the worst thing that could happen. I don't know how you could live with yourself as a fantasy owner if you allowed somebody else in your league to buy one of your first, let's say 8 rounds, first 8 picks low. I don't know how you could live with yourself as a fantasy owner if you allowed somebody to buy one of your first 8 picks low. I could never do that. I would never do that, and I would never advise anybody to do that. So the only way that happens is injury stuff, and Tank Dell's not injured. So I would not freak out, and I would not trade Tank Dell. And again, there's no such thing as one size fits all for trades. Let's see. What are some? Let's get some waiver wire questions on here before we do some trade questions. Steeler Hunt. Here we go. I've been waiting all night. So the YouTube, again, anybody on the socials right now, the YouTube is, you can click the link in my bio to join it, but it's under my live stream tab on my page. So Carson Steele, Kareem Hunt. Guys, for right now, Carson Steele should probably be your number one priority waiver overall. But when it comes to the Chiefs backfield, your number one priority. I'm going to take a big sip of water here. We saw what Kareem Hunt did, and it's a little weird. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this. It's a little eerie. Week 3 last year, came into Cleveland. Granted, it was his first game, so he didn't have a lot of touches, but that was the first game he came back into Cleveland after a starting running back injury. A team he had already been on before. Got the goal line work. Got the receiving work. All I'm saying is if you're in a deep league, you got a roster spot, you want to take a flyer on somebody, I don't want to say the sky is the limit, but I think he could wind up being a flex in your lineup, especially if you're in a deeper league. It would not surprise me based on the receiving ability, the comfort and familiarity with at least some of the schemes, some of the players on the team. It literally happened last year. And Kareem Hunt last year was a moderately consistent flex. So right now, Carson Steele, absolutely no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But here, I just said it, but get Kareem Hunt if you can. You're in a deep league. Don't put him in your top priority claims for waivers. Just put him, bottom. Maybe just see how the rest of the league falls. But I don't know. It's eerie to me. It's weird to me that this is happening at the same time. It's like the Brian Windhorst meme. Something's going on here. It's weird. It's a little weird. It's really weird. I'm taking a flyer on Kareem Hunt, truthfully, and I hope none of my league mates are watching this right now. But I'm going to, and it's going to depend on the league size and my roster availability. But I'm personally, truly telling you, if I have the spot to get Kareem Hunt, I'm going to do it. Gesicki or Henry waiver wire? I was actually just talking to one of my friends about this. So with Mike Gesicki, it's really interesting because the route participation is there. Obviously, he was coming off a big game, but I actually outlined this on my Twitter if you guys didn't see. The matchup was unbelievable. I didn't expect a big game from Mike Gesicki and the Cincinnati Bengals, his second game as a Bengal. But the matchup numbers told me to expect that. That was a very favorable matchup for Mike Gesicki. Banged up Chiefs linebacker core as well. That was a part of it. Now, Hunter Henry, at least based on the data we saw week 1, the matchup was it was fine. It wasn't anything crazy. I just think he's Jacoby Brissett's safety blanket. So if you're looking for a backup tight end, I think Henry every single time. I don't think Henry should be available in most leagues right now, but Henry every single time. Henry every single time over Gesicki. But Gesicki is still a good option. So if you don't get Henry, don't forget to put in a second waiver claim for Mike Gesicki. All right, let's see some other waiver questions. Again, if you guys are asking questions on YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok, make sure you're following and you're subscribed so they show up on my screen. Let's get to some other waiver questions, though, before we talk trade stuff. Maybe there just aren't a lot of waiver questions right now. Here we go. Derek, if I need a wide receiver, what do I get on the waiver wire? So I would say priority one should be Demarcus Robinson. I think when you look at Demarcus Robinson, the route participation, and the fact that Matthew Stafford legitimately has nobody else to throw the football to right now, he's kind of the no-brainer. I pray you listened to me last week, though, because he was like a lower-end sleeper guy that I had that was like, yeah, very much like Kareem Hunt. Take a flyer if you're in a deeper league. It's probably worth the shot, especially looking at him and guys like Jordan Whittington and who is the other wide receiver we're looking at? Oh, come on. Give it to me. What's his name? Fourth Rams receiver. Oh, come on, Max. You got to know this. Give me 10 seconds here. Give me 10 seconds. You guys can type it in the chat if you know it too. Tyler Johnson. But yeah, I was last week talked about it. Route participation, lean away from Tyler Johnson and lead towards Demarcus Robinson. So again, I hope you listened last week, but he should be priority one in the receiver world. I think Jordan Whittington is worth a look to. Some deeper guys. Let me start with this. Non-deep guys, if you're in like an 10-man-ish league, Quentin Johnson, I think is solid. I don't love it. Alec Pierce, solid. I don't love it. If you're looking for a multi-week streaming option, so if you have Puka Nacua, if you have, I don't know what the deal is with Kupp and how long he's going to be out for. So I guess Kupp. Trying to think what other receivers are on IR or out multi-week. But like if you need a Debo, if you need a multi-week streaming option, Jawan Jennings is the one to me because that is legitimately a really good wide receiver with minimal competition in the pass game. Now with Kittle's injury, McCaffrey's injury, and obviously Debo out, I think that's probably the best you get for a multi-week streaming option, just to fill a void on your team. Let me think if there's any others as well. Pull up some receivers here. Again, if you guys are on TikTok, if you're on Instagram, I appreciate you guys hopping on. Make sure you're following if you're not already. You can ask your questions on here, but I'm answering them and pulling them up on YouTube. You can click the link in my bio to go to YouTube and check that out. But let me just look at some wide receivers really quick because there's nobody else that's really coming to the top of my head that's like, you got to have them. I mean, people love Romeo Dobbs. Sure. Yeah, I guess. I mean, Andre Yoshivas if T. Higgins is out again, but I'd be shocked if we didn't see Higgins. So here's a good one. Do you think I should drop Keon Coleman for a tight end because I have Evan Engram? Well, let me ask you, who else do you have on your roster? Because I think you should have a backup tight end. But two, I think Keon Coleman fell victim to the matchup he had last week. If you guys watched any of my statistical breakdowns, any of my coverage stuff for Thursday night, you knew on both sides, but especially on Miami's defense, like everything pass game came between the hashes. It was middle of the field. That's why Shakir had such a great game. I'm still so pissed about the Dalton Kincaid stuff because if Dalton Kincaid had, I think it was 13 more yards, we would have gotten every single player projection right this week. Like that we were one away. Besides the point. Everything was in between the middle of the hashes, and Keon Coleman didn't really run a ton of slot routes. So that was, I think he fell victim to a matchup. Speaking of falling victim to a matchup, I just saw this question. Would you trade? Oh, I'll come back to the Curtis Samuel question in a second. Hold on. Everybody's asking questions so fast, I keep clicking on the wrong one. Would you trade Neighbors for Godwin? No, I would rather have Malik Neighbors. I think, again, Chris Godwin, benefited from a really, really good matchup last week. Detroit secondary is not good, but especially in the slot, benefited from it. Had a super long touchdown that really helped too. But no, Malik Neighbors is going to get pumped the ball 15 times a game. I don't think it's realistic to expect Godwin to do that on a week-to-week basis, despite who his opponent is. Like, I think he's going to have, in order to have a game like that, like Chris Godwin just had, he's got to have a favorable matchup in a close game. And if Tampa Bay is as good as they are, I don't know how many close games they will really be in. Call me crazy for that, but Time to pass on Curtis Samuel. I think he's still worth having on your roster because he will be the tip of the spear if Khalil Shakir gets hurt. Like that'll be a deep guy that you kind of want to have if Shakir gets hurt. Not necessarily like a wide receiver handcuff because those don't really exist, but he's a good depth guy to have. It depends who's available, but should I pick up Whittington or Tolbert? I would say Whittington. I think there is an off chance that he steps in and is that new Puka for 3 weeks, but new Puka. So I would say take the chance on Whittington because there's legitimately no other options in the pass game. Like it's him, it's Parkinson, it's Robinson, and Tyler Johnson. But like we talked about Tyler Johnson, I'm not on the Tyler Johnson train right now. You think I should get Coleman for Jennings? See, now this is tough. Look, I don't think Debo is going to be out more than 2 weeks. I think he's out 2 weeks max. I think when you're getting Juwan Jennings, what you're doing is getting a multi-week flex, I guess. A multi-week streaming option, though, regardless of where you put him. With Keon Coleman, I mean, it's a really good option to have him as a consistent flex. Like we saw week 1 in a normal matchup. And again, I think the scheme played into Coleman's benefit. That he is the number 1 in the offense. Like that was the reality. It wasn't Kincaid. It wasn't Shakir. It was him. He had the most targets week 1. But how often are we going to see that? And can you really consistently trust this Buffalo Bills offense? I don't think you can. But when push comes to shove, I'm going to take the guy who I can trust or at least know what I'm going to get all season instead of 2 to 3 weeks with Juwan Jennings. So I would not drop Coleman for Juwan Jennings. I would not do that. Trade Waddle for Ridley or Brian Thomas. Jaguars offense is going to be volatile. I'm not, I don't know if staying away is the right word, but Jaguars offense is going to be volatile. So I am going to kind of lean away from Brian Thomas. Ridley's a really interesting one, though. Sorry, guys, 1 second here. Ridley's a really interesting one because I do think that there is some unique value in what Calvin Ridley brings. He's a deep threat, and now they're using him in the slot as a gadget guy. Like, I think Calvin Ridley will have a bigger role than most people give him credit for. So at this point, if you're going to trade Waddle for Ridley, you're gambling on Ridley. I don't know if you want to do that. I would rather have Waddle, but if you don't trust the quarterback situation right now, we don't know what the deal with Tua is. We don't know if he's done. Ridley over Brian Thomas in the trade for sure. For sure. Again, if you guys are asking questions, make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube. Make sure you're following on the socials so they show up. You think I should get Rashee Rice or Brandon Ayuk? Absolutely. I think you should do that. Do I trade Metcalf and Waddle for Jamar Chase? No, I wouldn't. I think if it was Metcalf for Jamar Chase, it'd be a different discussion, but not both of them. Not both of them for sure. Devontae Adams and Tank Dell for James Cook. See, that's tough because I think Adams for Cook is moderately even. Obviously, I'd rather have Cook, but I don't think there's a super big difference. You throw in Dell. If you have receiver depth, I would do that. I would rather have Cook, but only if I feel comfortable with my backup receivers. Trade Olave and Brooks for Devontae. Yes, I would do that. Would you trade Mike Evans and Zamir White for Josh Jacobs and Ladd McConkey? I would probably rather have Jacobs and McConkey, to be honest with you. Do I pick up Quentin Johnson or Juwan Jennings? I have Cup out, need a wide receiver. Since you have Cup out, so here's the deal with your situation and anybody's situation. If anybody here who has Cooper Kupp, this is the deal with your situation. Obviously, you don't know how long he's going to be out, right? It's multi-week. Is it 4+? We'll see. But the deal with Cooper Kupp, he's out a couple weeks. You need a filler. You need somebody to step in, not somebody to go win you a championship. Because the reality is right now, we don't think Cooper Kupp's out for the year. I don't think Cooper Kupp's out for the year. It doesn't seem like Cooper Kupp's out for the year. I'd be shocked if he was. But you need somebody for the next couple weeks. Quentin Johnson, to me, is the long-term option here. He's solid. He'll be a flex guy. you got multiple receivers or even one receiver on a bye, you put them in and you'll feel comfortable. That's awesome. If you need somebody to fill the void for a couple weeks, Jawan Jennings is a legitimate flex option to do that. That's why my biggest piece of advice to Puka owners, anybody on here, the socials, anybody on YouTube, Puka owner, I think Jawan Jennings will fill those shoes for the next 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. You'll get Puka back, and oh my gosh, your team will be in such a better spot. Such a better spot. You can take my word for it. And I am really excited to see what Jawan Jennings does too. It was who was talking about it on ESPN? I don't think it was Dan Orlovsky. It was Field Yates. Field Yates brought up a great point. Like, Jawan Jennings is talented enough to be a starting wide receiver. Now he's starting. So, like, what are we waiting for here? Like, he's going to have a good couple weeks out here. Give him a chance. Give him a chance. Again, if you guys are on TikTok right now, I'm answering questions on my YouTube. You just got to be subscribed there. You can click the link in my bio, go over to my YouTube, subscribe, and ask the questions on there. I'm pulling them up for everybody to see. So if you're asking questions on here, I won't be able to see them. Obviously, you got to be following, but I won't be able to see them. I'm looking at them on YouTube. Again, YouTube questions. Keep them coming. Do you think I'll answer this question, then I'll answer the McLaurin question. I picked up Carr. Should I be starting over Burrow? Am I overreacting? This week, I would still lean Burrow. Guys, Burrow looked damn good last week. He looked damn good without Diego last week. So I would probably still start Burrow. Do you think I need to worry about Terry McLaurin? A little bit, but panic meter is not extremely high. It's a very similar situation to, I guess, Rashad White's not right. I don't know. There's growing pains with a rookie quarterback, and that's the reality. There's no real comparable situation to this in the NFL, I guess, right now. But I think there's growing pains with the rookie quarterback. I would compare it to DJ Moore, but there's multiple receivers in that offense. There really aren't other options other than Terry McLaurin. I think as time goes on, Jaden Daniels will get more comfortable. He'll be able to complete passes that he shouldn't, give Terry McLaurin chances down the field. I think it's just a matter of time. So I'm being patient with McLaurin because, again, anybody watching on TikTok, again, if you guys are asking questions, make sure you're following so they pop on my screen. But my biggest piece of advice to you guys, and I'll probably say this till like week 4, week 5, anybody who is panicking about any of your first, let's say 5, 6 draft picks, I would not be able to live with myself as a fantasy owner if I allowed somebody else in my league to buy low on one of my first 6 picks. Because the reality is, if you have a player right now who's struggling, let's say Terry McLaurin, who are a couple others that we're talking about, Jamar Chase, any players who were drafted in the first, Michael Pittman, any players who were drafted in the first few rounds that are not performing how you thought they were. Anybody who's trying to trade for those guys in your league is trying to buy them low because they think they're going to be better. That's how it works. That's how the trade psychology works. Me personally, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I allowed another league mate to buy one of my players low. Just how I operate, just how I think. I don't know. You guys don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to me. I love when you do. Again, if you guys are on TikTok, I see your questions. Make sure you're clicking the link in my bio, heading over to YouTube, subscribing, obviously, so I can see the questions, but asking questions on YouTube. That is where I am answering them right now. Same with you guys on Instagram. I'm exclusively answering questions on YouTube right now. Never been a sell low guy. Amen, brother. Amen. Hey, Zach, what's going on? Appreciate you. Oh, number 1 waiver priority, 12-man. PPR, Steele, Gesicki, Henry. I have Andrews. Don't worry about tight end. Or just wait, Carson Steele. Because I think, like, look, I'm higher on Kareem Hunt, and I can go into that if enough of you guys want me to who are on the YouTube right now. I'm higher on Kareem Hunt and that possibility than I think a lot of other people are. But Carson Steele, I mean, chances are he's going to be the goal line guy in a good offense, going to get the majority of the snaps. Like, you're getting probably a high-end running back too for the next month and a half. I think it's worth it. I think it'll help you win a couple games right now. If it doesn't help you long-term, it doesn't help you long-term, but it propels you in a better spot come fantasy playoff time and things like that. So I think it's worth it for sure. All right. Is it crazy to trade Andrews for Jamison Williams if my wide receivers are hurt and I got Bowers? I don't love that trade, but I love where your head is at. I love trying to trade a tight end right now when you have two guys. What I would say to you, Sam, is go to a team who, let's see, what tight ends? Go to the Travis Kelce owner in your league. Go to maybe the Sam Laporta owner in your league. Go to Kittle had a good game. McBride's fine. I would say target somebody, Evan Engram owner in your league, because chances are that whoever drafted Evan Engram drafted them as their starter and waited for a backup. Go to the owners of teams who really need a tight end. Like I wouldn't hyper fixate on trading a tight end for a specific receiver. But what I would tell you is go to a team or an owner that needs a tight end or is unhappy with their tight end play, has an injury at tight end, whatever it may be. Try to trade for one of their receivers. That you're going to have a much better chance of successfully executing a trade that way. Ooh, here's a really, really good question. What are some buy low wide receivers I can get? I'm going to list a couple off for you. That might be the best question we've gotten so far. Again, if you guys are on Instagram right now, if you guys are on TikTok right now, I'm exclusively answering your waiver wire questions on my YouTube. Just click the link in my bio and subscribe there. Again, if you guys are watching on YouTube, you're not subscribed, you won't be able to see the questions, but make sure you guys are subscribed so I can physically see the questions you're asking. Buy low wide receivers. I would say you can lean into the panic that Dolphins owners or Dolphins receivers owners are feeling Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Does somebody try to trade Tyreek Hill? Probably not. But I think if you had the right package for him, you would be able to get him at a lower value. That by definition, technically a buy low. Jamar Chase, same exact way. It's tough. I don't want to lean into the Panthers offense, but like Deontay Johnson, you get him for a bag of chips right now. And Andy Dalton loves to throw to the slot. So I think that's worth a shot. I think Deontay Johnson's worth a shot because, again, you can literally get him for a bag of chips. Tank Dell coming off a bad game. Another good one. See, like Christian Kirk fascinates me, but there's just no volume there for him. It's insane to me. Christian Kirk, no. Ayuk. Ayuk is another one. And here's the thing with Ayuk. Like, these next 2 weeks, his production is going to be spiked and inflated because Debo's out. So if you're an Ayuk believer, now is the best time to trade for him because next week he could have 20 plus. Who does San Fran play to? Don't they pull it up? San Fran plays the Rams. Yeah. So like he's going to have a huge game. Now is your time to buy low on Ayuk if you are even slightly on the Ayuk train because pretty soon you're not going to have the opportunity to, guys. You're not going to have the opportunity to. So I would say now is probably the best time to buy Ayuk if you are even slightly on the Ayuk train. Like I don't know how I feel about him. It's not somebody I'm super high on, somebody I really want to. If you're even partially on the train, now is the time to get him. I see a couple of people talking about Garrett Wilson. See, that's a tough one. And Mike Evans, this question from Drew, should I trade Mike Evans for Garrett Wilson, is also a tough one. Look, guys, like the bottom line with weeks, I guess 1 through 4, but 1 and 2 especially, like the volatility of the two games is going to be something to really look at. Now, I will tell you, week 2 matchups for both of those guys, Garrett Wilson, Mike Evans, were not favorable. They were not favorable. I think when you look at the lie, my bad. For anybody on YouTube, my bad. Look at the Lions secondary and say the Lions secondary is bad. They're not that bad outside the numbers, and that's where Mike Evans is. So that was a huge reason. One, he didn't have as good of a game as we thought. Definitely not as good as a game in week 1. Commander's secondary was horrendous outside too. But that was part of the reason Chris Godwin played so well. So it's hard to tell, especially with a guy like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, where the production and the targets are going to lean on a weekly basis. It's going to be very coverage driven, which again, if you guys are on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, you're not following, you're not subscribed. I go deep into that stuff, into the coverage stuff. Week 1, Mike Evans was my play of the week. Week 2, Chris Godwin was my play of the week. It's all coverage based stuff. That's why Mike Evans scares me. He scares me a little bit. So I would rather have Garrett Wilson number one, the main pass option in the offense. Like there's really no competition. There's no Chris Godwin or no Mike Evans he's competing with. But number two, again, I think the reality is, and we as human beings, like I think it's just human nature. It's not even like a fantasy thing. Just get so impatient with people coming back from injuries. And I think we're getting really impatient with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense because, guys, Aaron Rodgers played 4 snaps last year before he ruptured his Achilles. It's a really tough injury to come back from to begin with. But he was also coming on a new team. Like that was his second game on a new team, guys. New team. We got to be patient with this Jets offense. Long-winded answer for I would rather have Garrett Wilson over Mike Evans right now, but be patient. And I think weeks 1 and week 2, it's a human nature thing. I hate to like make it bigger than fantasy football, but it is. Like we're impatient people. We all want to win. We want to win right now. Like we got to be patient. And again, I'll say, Casey, this is a great question. I'm going to answer this in 2 seconds. I'll say this, and I've said it on the lives a couple times. Like I wouldn't be able to live with myself as a fantasy owner if I traded one of my first like 6 picks after the first couple weeks of the season, unless they're injured. Like unless there's legitimate reason to panic or there's an injury. Don't, because I can't imagine letting my league mates buy low on one of my players and then having that success. Like you can't, come on. Like that's, gives me the chills. I don't like that. But KC, great question. Again, if you guys are on Instagram and TikTok, I'm exclusively answering questions on my YouTube right now. So you can go to my profile, click the link there and subscribe and ask your questions there. That way I can pull them up for everybody as well. But I will tell you right now, the very, very interesting thing about streaming defenses this week is that the majority of the ones that were left on the waiver wire from last week really don't have great matchups. Like Tampa Bay is my streaming defense of the week against Denver. But I look at like deeper leagues and defenses that are available. Let's put the threshold at like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen for the YouTube people too. Let's go to filter all, present, share screen. Got it. Okay. All right. So like I go to this. Oh, you can't see it. Come on. There we go. Okay. But like I look at the defenses that are available right now. And again, if you guys are confused on what's going on, I'm on YouTube pulling all this stuff up on my screen. Click link in my bio, subscribe. Like anybody, where are we going to put the threshold? Let's put the threshold at like 50. Like defenses that are owned and below 50% of leagues, like Chicago against Indy, I don't love it. Cincy against Washington's not bad, but I don't love it. Houston against Minnesota is good. Like I think it's solid, but again, the Minnesota offense looked decent last week. Philly against New Orleans, no way. Bills against Jacksonville, that is my sleeper defense of the week. I really like the Bills defense against Jacksonville. Schematically, I think they line up really, 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 really well. I think they're going to get after Trevor Lawrence. They're going to get after him. So sleeper, I do like that, but Houston against Minnesota, no shot. Commanders against Cincy, no shot. Colts against Chicago, yeah, not bad. Not bad, but I didn't love what I saw from the Colts run defense last week. So legitimate cause for concern. Atlanta against Kansas City, no shot. Green Bay against Tennessee is a solid one. New England against the Jets, I'm not doing it. Broncos against Bucks, no way. Raiders against Carolina, probably the second best option you have right now in terms of streaming defenses. Bucks against Denver is the best one. Giants against Cleveland, I don't love that. I don't know why the projection is so high. I don't love that. I think Cleveland will have their way through the air. Tennessee against Green Bay, like it's a good defense, but we saw what Green Bay could do last week on the ground. So I think solid option there. So if I had to rank like a top 3, Tennessee or Tampa Bay for sure. Love that. Number 2 would probably be Green Bay against Tennessee. Number 3 would be Tennessee against Green Bay. But I'm not falling for like the projected points trap of the Giants. I think Raiders against Carolina is a decent start, but I don't absolutely love it. Great question though, Casey. So long-winded answer. Tampa, these are defenses that are available in less than 50% of leagues, or more than 50% of leagues. Tampa, I guess Chicago falls in threshold too. So Tampa, Chicago, although you should own the Chicago defense in your league. Why am I like it? Tennessee, Green Bay, probably Vegas. I don't know. Like Vegas' secondary is just not that good. So like you look at that, it's a great matchup against Kansas City or Carolina. They're just not that good. Like I don't know. It worries me. I always, at least when I stream defenses, try to have some confidence in one of the two phases, like the run defense or the pass defense. I think the Bucs holistically are just good, but I would not stream a defense I didn't have at least a little bit confidence in like a neutral matchup. That's not how I roll, unless it's I'm trying to think like last week against Cleveland. The Jacksonville Jaguars. Although their front seven's good, so like don't stream defenses if you don't have at least some general confidence in what they can do. You know what I mean? I wouldn't do that. That's just me. Again, you don't always have to listen to me, but I hope if you guys are on here right now that you do appreciate my advice. And anybody who's on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube right now, I will continue to answer the questions. But I do want to thank you guys. First 2 weeks of the season has been absolutely crazy. Your support has been absolutely crazy. And full transparency, outside of my week 2 game predictions, which were terrible, guys, our player projections, our higher lowers, all that stuff has been unbelievable. Like, I kind of overhauled how I research data in the back half of last year. So I do it differently now. Guys, we have been real good. Like, it's a little scary, and I'm not going to change the process, at least right now. We've been real good. I think we're 13-5 right now in terms of higher, lower, like player projections, which is really good. Upset picks and game picks are not great, but starts of the week, hitting the nail on the head, at least statistical matchups. Guys, I pulled Mike Gesicki against the Kansas City Chiefs out of my ass last week. Like, numbers said Mike Gesicki against the Chiefs. All right, let's throw it on the Twitter. Boom. Like, that's the type of stuff, guys. You got to trust the numbers. And again, if you're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, I appreciate you guys, and I'm so thankful that you do trust me and trust my research, because if you're listening, it is paying off in your leagues, and that's the reality of it. We're only in week 2. We can't get too far ahead of ourselves, but I appreciate you guys big time in that. Let's continue to answer these questions, but I had a little moment there. I just want to thank you guys, because it's been a wild ride these first couple weeks of the season. It's been insane. The support's been insane. It's been super awesome. And again, if you guys are asking questions on TikTok, Instagram, number one, obviously make sure you're following so they pop up on my screen. But what I'm doing right now exclusively on YouTube is pulling up questions for my subscribers that I can read off to everybody else so we can get on the same page with the exact same, thank you for the gift, exact same questions. All right. Oh boy. How concerned should I be with Tyreek should I start JSN over him? No, you should not start JSN over him. It's normal to be concerned with Tyreek Hill. I get that, but he's quarterback proof. Like, it was, granted, Sam Darnold's better than the backups the Dolphins have, but it was the same thing with Justin Jefferson that I saw. Quarterback proof. Doesn't matter. Good coach, good scheme, going to find ways to get him the football. It's so much less important to me who the quarterback is in a scheme like that. Whereas, I'm trying to think, like if Dak got hurt, that would worry me with CeeDee Lamb a little bit. If Joe Burrow got hurt, actually, I don't even know if that would worry me. Like, elite receivers, guys, to me are still pretty much quarterback proof, but don't worry about Tyreek Hill. At least don't worry too much about Tyreek Hill. I think you'll be fine. Chargers, Bucks, or Raiders defense. I think that Chargers game is legitimately going to be 12-9, but I think the Bucks defense gives you a better chance. I think the sacks, the production along the line gives you a better chance for sure. Ooh, yes. Great question, Derek. Can you get into Hunt? Because on the waiver wire, I'm most likely going to get Steele and Hunt. Can you get into it? Yes. So anybody on TikTok right now, anybody on Instagram right now, and obviously you guys on YouTube, we're going to talk Kareem Hunt for a little bit. What's going on, Bryce? We're going to talk Kareem Hunt for a little bit. So if you guys had Isaiah Pacheco on your team, if you had a running back that got hurt, or you just need running back depth, you got the number one waiver priority, because I do think Carson Steele is worth the number one waiver priority right now. This is good information. So I think I am personally somebody who's higher on the Hunt train than a lot of other people are. I just continue to go back to what happened last year. And if any of you guys, I guess, are Browns fans or watched Kareem Hunt last year, it was pretty clear to see that with a specific role carved out for him, he can still be a really good player. Like, he was their goal line guy, and he was damn good at it. He was their pass game guy. He helped out in pass pro. He was a really good player, and I think the Chiefs can carve out a role for him. Here's the thing, though. I am really skeptical about Carson Steele and just the overall, I don't want to say talent. That's nice. The overall expectations of what Carson Steele can do. because I think a large reason he is getting the number 2 carries is because Clyde Edwards-Helaire is away from football. I think if Clyde Edwards-Helaire was healthy and playing, it wouldn't even be a discussion who the number 2 is. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be immediately the number 1 waiver pickup this week. It wouldn't even be a discussion. Now, with that being said, he's on the non-football injury list. He's out 4 weeks, but you don't really know when he's going to come back. So to me, I'm kind of pushing that to the side. And yes, Carson Steele is absolutely worth your number 1 waiver claim. But you're in a deep league, guys, take a flyer on Kareem Hunt. Take a flyer on Kareem Hunt, especially right now if you're 2-0, you love where your team is at. Whew, boy. Because if he comes in and he's the Chiefs goal line and third down guy, oh my gosh. That's a weekly flex that you just got just like that off the waiver wire. That was a bad stat. Just like that off the waiver wire. So, I don't know. To me, it's worth a shot. I think, again, based on what happened last year, and I don't know, it's so weird to me. It's so weird to me that it's happening on week 3 again. Came to Cleveland week 3 last year and immediately had an impact on a team he had already been on. It's happening again. History does repeat itself. Can't let that emotionally drive what we're really thinking here. We're fully thinking here, but history does repeat itself, guys. And I think it's worth noting, and I think it's worth at least thinking about if you're in a deeper league to take a flyer on that guy. I think it's worth a shot. I will answer a couple more questions here. It's a good question. Will the all IR team better than the all pro first team? It might be this year. It might be this year. Should I be concerned with Waddle, start him, or Seattle running back? If one of the Seattle running backs is out, Luis, I'll pull that question. That was a good question. If one of the Seattle running backs is out, Walker probably. If Walker's out, Charbonnet should not leave your lineup. Like that is a 20 touch a game guy. Shouldn't leave your lineup. Ooh, good question from Teresa. I need to drop Christian Watson. Do I pick up Alec Pierce, Quentin Johnston, or Jawan Jennings? I think your long-term answer is still Quentin Johnston. I'm a little more skeptical of Alec Pierce, but if you have a guy like Puka on your team, if you have a guy like Cooper Kupp on your team, if you have a guy like Debo on your team, Jawan Jennings is a legitimate starter in probably a 12-plus person league for the next 2 weeks. So I think if you want to put pedal to the metal, win now, Jawan Jennings, no brainer, but long-term option is Quentin Johnston, at least for me. All right, guys, I'm going to hop off here in a second. If you're on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, I appreciate you guys hopping on. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Make sure you follow on these socials. I'm going to be live for anybody on YouTube. I'm going to be live on Instagram and TikTok again in a little bit, probably like an hour and a half or so. And I should be live a little bit tomorrow as well. So make sure you guys are following. And again, if you guys are on TikTok and Instagram, make sure you check out the video I just posted. It's pretty awesome. It's a little in real life video. You guys can see what I do on a weekend. Travel to Jacksonville to watch some football. So check that stuff out. I appreciate you guys again. God bless you all, and I will see you next time on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok.